так вот на входе наша висит. Класс. Акула наша, да? Наши номера серийные, все наше. Вот так вот вам. По локтянам на окончание танцуют. Вот это аппарат, да? О, блин, опять наш Шольц. Нормандия Неман. О, блин. Какой подход был? Вот я третий. Да. Или из дельфина. У немцев он был, да? Это сплит. Спидкар, пожалуйста. Это гоночный, сейчас еще сверху сниму. А вот это вообще бомба. Сейчас покажу. Бепланище. Новый Орлеанский какой-то. Охренеть, да? Новый Орлеан какой-то. класс. Хокер Харикейн класс. Тут награды. Охрененный аппарат, а? Глянь, самолет. Мельчайший какой-то. На нем, говорят, это Джеймс Бонд летал. Агент 007. А, Бастард это сейчас понимаю, что это. Это биде какой-то сейчас, вот. Сюда он такой маленький. Представь. Чум. Так, ля красота. Мустанг. Так, все, вижу Мустанг. Североамериканский Т-51 Мустанг. Истребитель. Так, вот это я знаю, такой самолет. Глянь, красота. Вот он в зеркале отражается. Класс. А это я. Глянь, ничего, какая аппаратина. Посмотрим, что это за птица. А у нас батарейки кончаются, какой ужас. Ну ладно, что успеем посмотреть. Так, это у нас Айши. Японский торпедный бомбер. Это вот торпеда. Ля, какая птичка летит. Ну это вообще не знаю, что это такое. Военный флот. Здоровый. Lockheed T-33. Реактивный самолет. Для баки, да? DC-3, да? Вот это аппарат. Маленький аэркуб. Красивый. Летчики тут такие. А вот еще бипланчик такой спрятали, летающий. Это у нас триплан Фоккер. Это акула висит, да? Гоночка. Зараза. Малюсенькая вообще. Называется Джуби. Даже брызга немножко, ну хана. Я здесь еще. Живой. Ага, виляет, ты видно, Да ладно, что втроем прямо взлетим. Да, а ну. Камон. Говорят, тут местные латиноамериканцы. На Москву, блядь. Сука. Ё-моё, вот это налет. Надвигается. Инструктор немец. Идет Цесна на посадку, блядь. Орел. Клац. На месте. Инструктор. Кобыли. Немцы пошли. Ну, почти ровно. Пока это надо. Что это? Конфедераты, блин. Последний. Наконец-то, где ты там? А ну, чувак. Наконец-то настоящий самолет взлетел, слышишь? Птиц, наверное, но это вертикально просто. I'm sorry. Can I have a quick shot inside the cockpit?
Of course.
Thanks a lot.
Go ahead.
Вот это вот так немцы летали здесь. Ну.
That's not a good example. That's not a good. Okay, well, now you're parking for the day, huh?
О, блин.
Well, you're one fortunate gal, you know that?
Опа, черепашки, нинджи. Нормально. Так, тут говорят в кабине вообще все есть. Давай посмотрим, хочешь? Оп. Они в этом строю летели. Ну, худи, блин. Ужасно. Не то, что у нас, да? 44-й. Sorry? Смешные какие-то. Тайронка, говорят, пришел уже. И здесь 12. Должный. Карман Катана называется. Охуительный пилотажный самолет. Говорят. Вот этой фигни они здесь учат пилотажу. Инструктор Сайтабря 150-я. Ну, летает, правда. Это у них заправочная станция. Инструктор. Самолеты тут подъезжают и заправляются. Hello, don't worry, it's fine.
Sorry.
No problem. Это цены на бензин у них. В галлонах. Галлон 3,8 литра. $2,36. Класс. Бипланчик интересный, да? Шляются всякие. Не наши чуваки. Рассматривают. Без мотора даже летает. Какая краса. Супер Декатлон пилотажная. Ужасные самолеты. Наверное, 200 лошадей нет. Супер Декатлон. Вот это еще один Супер Декатлон. Вот это у них пилотажный самолет, инструктор типичный. Ручечка, вся фигня. Вторая ручка. Тут радио. Дупланчик, смотри, Стирман. Класс. Эй. И планище, да? Класс. На костер, да? Оп. Фордик, да? Смотри, даже приборы есть. Кайф аппарат. На таком бы с девками, да? Сороковая Сесна, блестящая. Офигеть, красивая.
He was just talking about 70s.
Тоже класс. Маленькая такая зараза, двухместная. Колеса у него. Это Rolls-Royce, да? Вот такая фигня, она по улицам ездит, столько здесь у них.
I saw Big Scout on the block.
I think he did.
Ну вот она, Cessna L19A 53-го года выпуска. Да, военная армия написано. Это у них круг такой инструктор, рядом с горами. Местечко, да? Вот тоже Cessna. Это, блин, такая. Так, это, короче, Cessna 185А 62-го года. Нормально вообще. 260 лошадей. Континенталь. О, бля. А что у него внутри? Интересно. Смешные какие-то, не права, блин. Я тебе дам. Четырехместная лучше. Класс. Поперек, да? И еще. Это у них ППП такая. Этого аэродромчика. Глянь, какие эти горы. Офигеть. Ровная вдоль. Колдыняка. Этот построил ангар, слышишь, говорит, не направляйте хвост на мой ангар, блин, сдувает нафиг. Заправочная станция. Ангары такие. Эх, мелкая сидит. Эй. У них ветер показывает, класс. Что, инструктор, а тут горы. Верхушки в облаках. Красотища. красивый. Колеса поспущены, бардак, короче, как в Советском Союзе, ну что, у нас лучше. Рамка чекает, что-то. Сейчас и пахнет вообще. Так вот американцы летают. А вот эта фигня их ждет типа дома, да? Ух! Вот, через это. У них есть такой небольшой авиационный музей. Пара машинок. И классные самолеты.
Has some metal shavings and a little bit of wood shavings, but not a lot. Actually, yeah. I was doing some engine turning.
So have you given up stuff flying or reckless things?
Я инструктор.
Yeah, I kind of retired, but I went back to work.
Самолет, короче, катапультируется на парашюте.
Then went right back to retirement.
Видно парашют.
Yeah. Yeah, that's use up the papers. You choose what you do. Yeah, yeah. So,
Нормально.
we're just finishing up another racetrack and, so this job
Вот
came
чуваки
up.
ходят по самолетам.
Pardon?
A dirt rigid?
No, it's actually a Ford Champ Car.
Is it?
Yeah, and, people, long wheelbase cars, not like that, these spring cars.
Более-менее.
Like that.
Паша, привет.
These are pictures here of this airplane here.
Oh, this one right here.
All the things
А, вот он.
going way back. Yeah. It's kind of historical.
Чувак самолет на парашюте сбросил.
I had the opportunity to race this airplane for about 5 years, back in the early 60s. And it's only airplane relocated it.
Yeah, it's a nice place, it's a beautiful place.
Thank you.
I said the Coca-Cola stuff is worth an arm and a leg now.
It is.
Портерфилд, сколько будет? 65-40 года. Наверное, пора.
We didn't know any different. I wish I had a house full of nothing right now.
Oh my.
Looks great. Shines. Wow. They did it, huh? Looks cool. Еще меньше можно сделать. Класс такой, прикольчик. Для самолетик вообще. Класс. Да. В общем, умельцы и здесь есть. Или не умельцы. Красота. Глянь, тут мастера еще. Что мы придумывали. Офигенно. Класс. Кто же летает? Блин, без колеса. $40. Маленькая такая. А тут вообще лянь. Ладно. Какие самолеты, да? То есть вот маленькие это. Что-то я думал, что это тоже летает. Офигеть. Бля, пиццяка, да? Да, что не летает на фотку? Ну, ничего. А. Блин. Что летает там? Да, видно? Вот, здесь пицца. А красочка?
We don't have that. Our dog is a Delta personality. It just sort of sits in one spot.
Костяка нормально.
16.
Офигенная раскрасочка, да? Обалдеть. Мне нравится.
We live in Monrovia, but we live at the very north edge of Monrovia. So we're in the mountains.
I know the area. I grew up in South Pasadena. What'd you roll? Or about?
I was so Magnolia Street for about a few years.
Oh my goodness.
Then my own house.
Oh my goodness. I grew up on Fletcher Avenue, which was one street.
Last stop was on one.
Between the two. It ate it all up.
And which elementary school did you go to?
Oneonta,
80-го года.
South Central, right.
32-й Лайкон, 260 лошадей.
South Pasadena High and South Pasadena Marina High. That probably is no longer, oops,
Yeah, they stopped that in 55.
5.
Yeah, I was got there in 61.
Охрененный, да, аппарат?
50.
Красиво. Глянь, их махина, да?
graduated from college.
Worked for years and years and years, lived on the other side of the street, but halfway between Huntington Drive.
We were, in fact, we were
Just got hit 2 kids, Edwin was one.
Now, between where and where?
Between Huntington and Ocean.
Oh, okay, that, and we were south of Huntington.
Лавентера классно. Красиво. Нормалек, да? Oh, wow.
He says it's cool. Go, okay.
It is. Боинг П-12 28-го года в армии, военный самолет. Нифига себе! Боинг, вот это дал ты Боинг. Вау.
Is that Russian?
No, it's Boeing. It's American.
No,
Russian
but
is
we were
yeah, we
thinking
fly.
you.
Of course.
You Russian?
Yeah.
We guess the plane is American.
How'd you know? I speak
What's a good
Russian.
time to go to St. Petersburg? Is September too late?
No, it's fine.
Fine? Still warm?
Of course. Сколько же у него горшков? А ну-ка, а то что? Не посчитал горшки. Интересно, что? Раз, два, три, четыре, пять, шесть, семь, восемь, девять, 9 горшков. Красотуля. Ой, нормально. Все-таки он летает. Летает. Лайк кормим 180 лошадей. Ван, сорви. 99-го года. 99-го года. И так у Хайдока в тачке. Вот. Да, прикинь, в кабине дверцы есть. Это вообще. Компосяка, блин. Опа. Это тигровый мотылек называется, Тайгер Мосс. Это я знаю такой, смотри. Тайгер Мосс. На нем бродячие пилоты катали всяких пассажиров. Все время по стране, по Америке гоняли. Я знаю такой. Тайгер Мосс. Да. Лес растет красивый. Hello. Wow. Looks perfect. еще один. И на этом катали. Смотри, колеса, блин, под проселочную дорогу. Что тебе еще надо? Вон. ПВД, наверное. Тяжелый мотылек, обалдеть тачка. Прикинь, высота. Часы. Первый дом. Пустой вес 300 килограмм. Раз. Вау. Боги на тебя нету, пацан. Какая красота. Тигровый мотылек, блин, ну кошел куда. 44-го года, 135 лошадей. Engine de Havilland. Это что, он химик или что? Не понимаю. Класс. Аппарат. Намного. Спортивный Ford Купе. Хана. Красотуля. Это джип, этот модель спортивка, помнишь, гоночная? Она тоже такие слова. Да, америкашка, да? Скуроченный. Сейчас вообще эти. На дипломе еще. Ай. Тут крылья делают. Или чинят там, или еще что-нибудь такое. Ах, 10-й. Опа. Ах ты лапочка, как ты капка, оказывается. Я смотрю, что он так круто заходит. Глянь, GPS прямо на руле. Все, вперед, на рога. Отцепь на нас с хвостовым колесом. Какая-то неграмотная. Там птица. Вот это прелесть. Раскрасочка, да? Винтяка горит. А сам в клеточку.
Bill explains imprinting as a gosling's attachment to the first thing it sees upon hatching.
As a bird develops in the egg, it starts to hear its mother at an early age. So if you replace that sound with the sound of an ultralight aircraft, then the bird becomes naturally attached to that sound. Sound's very important to birds, so that as they grow, then it'll follow the aircraft as they get older. What we do with geese or cranes, etc., is try and duplicate what happens in nature. And the closer you can duplicate what happens in nature, the more likelihood that the bird will return to nature later on. So, but at the same time, they'll learn to follow the aircraft, and that's what we're looking for. When they first start to fly, they're like kids. They play with everything to learn how to do it. They play with their wings. They play with the wind off the aircraft. They move around the aircraft until they find a comfortable place. They know when they can fly most efficiently. So if they're flying off the wingtip and they're getting lift, that's fine. But they're all characters. They're all personalities, and that's the beauty of it. Some of them, they don't care about flying efficiently. They just want to fly next to Dad or whoever's in the aircraft that they're attached to. So they'll fly up close to you. That doesn't always work great for them because that's not an efficient place to fly, and they'll get tired more early than the ones that fly off the wingtip, for example.
Bill says the most rewarding part of his work is his vantage point. In the 30 million years since the first prehistoric creatures soared the skies, he's been one of the few people to get this close to truly understanding flight, a dream of his since childhood. In addition to raising families of geese, Bill Lishman nurtures his own family. He also wrote an autobiography about his studies, which was later made into the feature film, Fly Away Home. The remainder of his time now is spent in flying, running Operation Migration, and developing his talents as a well-known nature artist.
Being an artist, I wanted to share that with everybody, so I filmed it and made the film Come On Geese. And that went around the world, and it was ornithologists that saw that film that said, perhaps this is the way to establish migration routes for endangered species of birds. Well, it was wonderful to take on that challenge and to try and develop the techniques to establish migration routes for endangered birds. So that's essentially how Operation Migration came to be.
Start off looking so nice. The Paris brothers found it in the dirt aside a rural Texas runway. It hadn't been flown for 10 years.
We found the Lockheed in '88. It was pretty tired and pretty old and pretty inexpensive at the time. You know, probably not so inexpensive now, but at the time it was. When Lockheed 12 was made, it was a commercial airplane of its day. It was built by the Lockheed Company in Burbank, California, and it was built in 1940. The Lockheed 12 is the second twin type that Lockheed built in the 30s and the 40s vintage. This was a civilian airplane owned by the Sconi Oil Company, and shortly thereafter that they sold it, and it went down to Venezuela. Spent most of its life in Venezuela being a mapper. And it had, when we bought it, there was a big hole in its belly where they used to mount the camera to do, photo work. And they stayed down there probably through the 50s and came back in the United States in about 60. And it was bought by a couple, it had changed hands a couple times and ended up in Texas, and that's where we bought it in 1988. This airplane spent a lot of time in South America, so you wonder the quality of work that was being done to it. It's probably not the same quality it's done in the States, and it was pretty tired.
Ioana and his brother restored their plane every night after work and on weekends for 10 years. 18,000 hours of work later, their Lockheed 12 is one of only an estimated 6 flying in the world today.
Well, pretty much the whole airplane needed work. We pretty much, you know, took the empennage off and the wings were off, both engines, and pretty much rescunned the complete airplane. We started the tail first, worked on that, and then we did the wing. Then we did the fuselage, and pretty much went through the fuselage, the center section, and then did engines and avionics, and the cowlings were the last big piece of sheet metal work that we did was all the cowling work. All the seats were done out of leather. We did some prototype work. He actually, you know, made one seat out of some scrap leather to make sure we got it the way we liked it. And once we got it like that, then he went ahead and did all the sewing. The interior, the headliner and the sidewalls were wool, and to get that, we had it fireblocked down in LA area, so it would meet the FAA specs. We worked on the interior with doing all the woodwork and the installing everything. Pretty close, maybe 9 months of just, you know, that kind of detailed stuff takes time.
Traffic, Lockheed 633, nothing low approach, runway 32.
It's a nice flying airplane. It's a fun airplane to fly. It's a pretty industrial strength airplane. I mean, you know, it's dressed for 6.5 positive Gs. I mean, you know, the center section, I mean, it's built like a tank. And, you know, the spar and the whole wing structure. So, I mean, you know, for us, I mean, what we've done, you know, we're never going to wear this thing out in our lifetime.
In 1999, the father of the Paris brothers accepted his son's Grand Champion Lindy Award for excellence in aircraft restoration. Work done on such a large, neglected airplane could have been an overwhelming task, but he kept things in perspective throughout his decade of work.
You just take piece by piece and go through it, and eventually you get the whole piece done. You get one big piece.
Next, a look at Operation Migration's latest ultralight and a peek behind the scenes of sport aviation.
Its basic function, it's a registered not-for-profit charity, and its function is to fund our work with endangered species. The problem is that there's only one flock of whooping cranes in the world. They migrate from the Northwest Territories of Canada down to the Gulf Coast of Texas. Now, back in the 1940s, there were only 16 birds in that whole flock. That was all there were in the world. Now there's 183 in the one flock, and the population's coming back, but the problem is they winter on the Gulf Coast of Texas, right next to the busiest shipping lanes in the world. So a chemical spill or an avian disease or a hurricane could wipe out their habitat or the population, and we would have no more wild migratory whooping cranes. Now, you can raise those birds in captivity, and you can guarantee a high survival rate, but if you release them, they just become resident. They stay there because nobody's ever shown them the route. They rely on their parents to do that. So what we're doing is using this technique to establish a new migratory population.
Unlike the geese used in the original studies, cranes imprint more deeply to humans. Because of this, cranes are conditioned to the aircraft using costumes.
All our birds are completely costume reared. It means we wear this big baggy outfit and our heads are covered and we look through a mesh screen and we carry a hand puppet. Now the idea is to not look like a crane but to disguise the human form so the birds don't become imprinted on humans. So consequently we can teach our birds to follow the aircraft, get them on the wintering ground, and they have never heard a human voice, never seen an uncostumed human, never seen a car. Their pen is a very natural looking pen. We have trees inside and outside. All the materials are natural. And so they have a very natural experience. And this is what it takes to condition a bird to follow an aircraft, yet remain wild enough to be released. We use a trike because of its simplicity. It packs down easily and is transported easily. It's light. There's only one moving part on the entire control surface because the wing pivots, of course, on the top of the trike, so you don't have bell cranks and push rods and ailerons. It's a simple aircraft to fly. I always say it's like flying it's like sailing a windsurfer. You know, you have the mast and the sail right in your hand, so you can actually feel every nuance of the wind when you're sailing. It's the same with a trike. You have that control right in your hand, and you can push it up into a stall and slow down for the birds, and you can actually feel the stall. You can feel the center of pressure moving backwards and forwards on the wing. It's a very sensitive aircraft, and it's a very safe aircraft. We use a 6-bladed prop on the back to cut the noise down. We use a 50 horsepower engine. Makes it a very safe airplane. Yeah, it's the slowest airplane. It's got a very gentle stall, so we can push the envelope at the slow end and not be in jeopardy. You know, when you stall this airplane, you can recover in 30 feet. So it's not a violent stall. So it's a good airplane for that. Yeah, and it flies the right speed. And it's a pusher prop, which means the prop is protected from the birds. They can't fly into it from the back because the prop wash, of course, and we have guards around the front, so it's safe. It's not like a prop in the front that's sucking the birds in. And it's transportable, it's light, and it'll fly the speed. We're all flyers, we're ultralight flyers, and that's grassroots aviation, and these are the birds that taught us how to do it. And they're in trouble, so they need our help.
Dirt and stones kicked back by the prop wash during taxiing and takeoff from blacking out gun sight aiming point camera lenses, a small piece of sheet metal used to be taped over the camera port. Then a length of wire would be taped from the wing tank to the piece of metal. When the wing tank was dropped, the metal tab would be torn off and the camera port cover would be cleared for photography. This method kept the camera port clean, but occasionally the tape which held the metal tab in place would not completely tear off, and the remaining piece would obscure the lens. To overcome this, a 15th Air Force Service Squadron mechanic has devised a new camera port cover consisting of 3 parts, all of which can be built from salvaged material. The cover is adaptable to almost any type of wing design. The main section of the device consists of a cover slide, a lever and a cable to open the cover slide, and a spring to close it. Pulleys guide the cable and keep it away from the wing brace. The main section is either riveted or bolted to the inside of the wing. The cover remains closed as long as the landing gear is down. But as the wheels retract after takeoff, the landing gear fairing presses on an activating rod and the cover slide is automatically opened. The camera is ready for action.
The award-winning television production crew at EAA is well known for their excellence in aviation videography. Part of EAA's mission is to record all types of aviation, and this is the airport that helps Oshkosh out. EAA's biggest secret is the New Holstein Airport, which is just a 19-mile flight east of Oshkosh. The Countryside Airport provides sport aviation crews and pilots an alternative to the hectic AirVenture grounds. The plush backgrounds allow better quality pictures and more in-depth interviews with pilots.
I like it in the sense that it's clean. You know, when you walk around, it's nice and clean, and people are nice. They do a good job.
New Holstein also offers pilots grass and concrete strips and a small-town look and feel of years ago. Look for the New Holstein Airport in many of this season's upcoming profiles and make the New Holstein Airport a destination on your next flight. That's all for now. Visit us next time and every time as we take a look at some of the most popular and exciting aircraft designs, visit the world's best aviators, and continue to explore the entire spectrum of recreational aviation. Join us in the left seat for the next edition of EAA's video magazine, Sport Aviation.
Mitchell finagled an appointment as an observer with the French Army. 1 week after his arrival, German U-boats sank the liner Lusitania, and the United States, completely unprepared, entered World War I. Despite promises of thousands of American-built planes, the United States had almost no pilots to fly them. Flight school consisted of 50 hours of rudimentary training, often with disastrous results.
Speed Vision's Wings and Water Wednesdays are brought to you by the
Designing easy-to-assemble aircraft, which were tested, then disassembled and packed in crates for the long voyage across the Atlantic. In the next 6 months, Mitchell was promoted to full colonel and given command of U.S. Air Forces assigned with the First Army. Mitchell believed that air power demanded special persons to be pilots, and he actively recruited those he felt demonstrated the right qualities. One of them was a young chauffeur attached to General Pershing's staff. He'd already established himself as a race driver in the States before the war, and so Eddie Rickenbacker of the famed Hat-in-the-Ring Squadron became a flyer, an ace fighter pilot, instead of a driver. But there were still no American planes to be had. Mitchell struck a deal with the French. If they would give him the planes, he would fly American pilots against the Germans. On Sunday, April 14, 1918, Mitchell gave the order to launch patrols against reported incoming German aircraft. 2 American pilots took off, and in less than 2 minutes engaged the Germans. 2 minutes later, both German planes had been struck, and their pilots bailed out. By July 1918, after 4 exhausting years of warfare, both sides were reaching levels of desperation. While the French and British control their sections on the ground, the Germans control the air. Attempts to send up observation planes only brought a swarm of a dozen German fighters, eager to send them flaming to the ground. The Americans devised a counter-strategy. Observation airplanes were escorted by as many as 50 American pilots. Now in the summer of the 4th year, the Germans made an all-or-nothing assault on the French-American lines near San Miguel. 70 German divisions crashed against the Allies and buckled the front lines. Mitchell recognized the Germans would throw thousands of airplanes into the fight unless he beat them to it. He ordered 1,500 planes to be readied and actually launched 1,481. He attacked the German supply lines, cutting the troops off from behind and trapping them between Allied ground forces and his massed pursuit planes and bombers. In the 4 days of the offensive, American flyers made 3,300 flights over enemy lines, dropped 75 tons of explosives, and destroyed 60 German aircraft. Based on his success in smashing the German offensives and coordinating air and ground units, Mitchell was promoted to Brigadier General in October 1918. He was drawing up plans for a new combat contingent. Armed with machine guns, these special infantry units would parachute into position from bombers designed to carry a dozen or more men. The war ended before Mitchell could try his idea. It would be another year before it was tested by one of his junior officers, a young major named Hap Arnold. Demonstrating the skills they had learned in combat to thrill crowds who gathered anywhere the sound of an airplane engine could be heard. Mitchell returned to Washington and the War Department as the acknowledged expert on military aviation. But those who commanded the Army and Navy felt that aviation was still just an adjunct to artillery and battleships. The service heads joined with powerful groups in Congress to effectively wipe out the aviation units in favor of more conventional weapons. Without realizing it, they began a battle which would last. The American and German navies considered her unsinkable. Mitchell's flight of bombers sighted and dropped their payloads. They placed the bombs around the ship, crippling the battleship's hull. It took less than 4 minutes and 4 bombs. Ostfriesland rolled and went down. Mitchell next led a flight of Martin bombers against the retired U.S. battleship Alabama. With General Pershing and other Army and Navy officers looking on from the transport ship San Miguel, the air group sent the ship to the bottom. The success of the bombing test did not spell the end of Mitchell's troubles with the Navy and War Departments. In fact, it made things worse. In the Air Corps, nothing happened. The Army and Navy kept their individual departments. In 1925, Mitchell was reverted to his permanent rank of colonel and transferred from Washington to Kelly Field as air officer. Others who had supported him, like Hap Arnold, were also reduced. America's first aerial assault against Japan was led by Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle, flying the B-25 bomber, named after Billy Mitchell. Billy Mitchell fought with distinction in 2 wars. He set a world speed record and proved beyond question that his vision of the future for the nation and his beloved air service were correct. Though a thorn in the side of those he considered mossbacks for failing to be innovative or intelligent, his voice and vision reflected his love of country.
What Mitchell did.
His dream for the United States Air Force was finally made a reality. A special act was passed by Congress, promoting Billy Mitchell to the rank of Major General, retroactive to the date of his death. It was, finally, recognition of the contributions to his country by this legend of air power.
Sport plane's regal majesty is still very much in evidence. Only one XC-99 was ever built, and when it first flew in 1947, it was the world's largest land plane. The XC-99 transport was the sister ship of the world's largest bomber, the B-36. They both were manufactured by Convair. They had the same engines, propeller system, wings, and bloodline.
The XC-99 came out of the Air Force's realization that World War II was going to be a transcontinental war, and they needed a transcontinental bomber and a transport. The bomber was the B-36. The transport was the XC-99, one of a kind.
The XC-99 had its maiden flight on November 24, 1947. This was more than 5 years after the project was started. The giant air transport was only one dream among many for those working to shape the future of flight. The reality of military violence in Europe meant putting many dreams on hold. In 1941, United States military planners faced the likelihood that Nazi Germany would not only control all of Europe, but England as well. A formidable air force and innovative ground tactics had made possible Germany's blitzkrieg conquest of the European continent. While Adolf Hitler had delayed an invasion of Britain, his patience with English defiance eventually grew thin. He ordered a full-scale air assault. The German military appeared to grow stronger every day. U.S. planners concluded that if trends continued, only bases in North America would be available to wage a counteroffensive. As German bombs rained down on the innocent, the U.S. planned to build a large intercontinental bomber. But not all of Germany's foes could be bombed into submission. Germany failed to destroy the Royal Air Force or curb Britain's will to fight. The British Isles became the staging point for the Allied counterattack. The bomber became the weapon of choice. And in that effort, the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress proved its worth time and time again. The fort, as it came to be known, was sent to England in great numbers and became the mainstay of the U.S. 8th Bomber Command. To ensure accuracy, U.S. commanders insisted on conducting bombing raids in daylight. With the first attack on Germany in January of 1943, the number of bombers in a single mission rose into the hundreds. But because existing Allied fighter aircraft lacked adequate range, the bombers had to fly out and back without protection. Initially, German fighter pilots did not know how to deal with the B-17's bristling machine gun turrets. But German pilots soon devised new methods of attack. One involved flying in from behind and below. The other was to fly at more than 300 miles per hour directly at the nose of the B-17, veering at the last second to miss the bomber's huge tail rudder. Combined with murderous curtains of anti-aircraft fire, hundreds of bombers were destroyed and thousands of crew members were killed. The biggest factor in the ultimate success of the Allied bombing missions was the introduction of the P-47 Thunderbolt and the P-51 Mustang as fighter escorts. With drop tanks and extra tank behind the pilot, the P-51 could fly with B-17s into German airspace and return. The B-17 presented a challenge with upgraded 50 caliber machine guns. But when the P-51 was fitted with a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, German fighter pilots were faced with an Allied aircraft was superior in almost all respects. The other U.S. heavy bomber used in the European theater was the consolidated B-24 Liberator. But both the Liberator and the Fortress had flown costly bombing missions with very little to show for them. And so, along with the fighter escorts, commanders devised precision flying and bombing. The commander of the 305th Bombardment Group, Colonel Curtis LeMay, devised the combat box for improved defensive firepower. And he put the best pilots and navigators in the lead formations. When the leaders dropped to attack, the rest of the formations followed. LeMay also insisted that the last minutes of a bombing run be flown straight and level, with the bombardier in control of the aircraft. The Allies bombed around the clock. Once they established air superiority, the effect was devastating. Bomb-damaged German factories could not replace lost aircraft or supply Germany's war machine. The U.S. was learning a lot about how to use a heavy bomber.
Ever dream you could fly? You can fly in a lot less time and for a lot less money than you thought.
We're having so much fun on the weekends. I'm glad Dad became a pilot.
Stop dreaming, start flying. Call 1-888-BE-A-PILOT. Ever dream you could fly? You can fly in a lot less time and for a lot less money than you thought.
Our weekends are so much fun. He should have become a pilot years ago.
Stop dreaming, start flying. Call 1-888-BE-A-PILOT.
We're here in this auto graveyard to demonstrate a remarkable car polish. New Finish, the once-a-year car polish. New Finish is not a wax. It's a unique polymer formula that's even safe for clear coat finishes. Simply wipe it on and just wipe it off. There's no rubbing, no buffing, and you can even apply it in direct sunlight. And look, New Finish restored a deep, hard shine even to this weather-beaten car. Just one application will give your car a showroom shine that lasts a whole year. To prove it, we polished this car with New Finish and ran it through 52 car washes. Even after heavy-duty detergents and powerful scrubbing, the water still beads. So get New Finish, the once-a-year car polish.
Top-rated New Finish, available at Pep Boys, Rite Aid, True Value, Ace Hardware, Advance Auto, Walgreens, AutoZone, Kmart, and other leading stores.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. Better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster.
Introducing the all-new 270-horsepower Chevy Trailblazer, the most powerful mid-size sport utility in the world. It's one strong SUV. The new 2002 Chevy Trailblazer, like a rock.
The Allies had also learned a lot about the effective use of air transports. Key to the supply effort was the C-47. Because it dropped food instead of bombs, it was affectionately called the biscuit bomber. This twin-engine aircraft was the military version of the Douglas DC-3. In the early going, it flew from northeast Australia to supply bases such as those on New Guinea. Later, it would be used to carry troops and supplies for the D-Day invasion. It was successful, but carried a limited amount of cargo. Deployment of the Boeing B-29 Super Fortress to the war in the Pacific marked a new era. With its 1,600-mile range and greater payload, the B-29 was potentially the most powerful bomber in the U.S. arsenal. But operational and technical difficulties at first caused officials to wonder whether the aircraft had any value. Curtis LeMay, now a major general, was put in charge of the bombing campaign and changed the B-29's mission to night attacks. Thousands of tons of incendiary bombs were dropped on key Japanese cities. This moved the Allies closer to victory and proved that the B-29 could be used on what was arguably its most important mission, delivering the atom bomb to targets in Japan. The Enola Gay was named for the mother of its commander, Colonel Paul Tibbets. Its first atomic bomb attack took place on August 6, 1945. The bomb, known as Little Boy, exploded 1,900 feet over Hiroshima, killing nearly 80,000 people. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped over Nagasaki, killing another 35,000. The two blasts obliterated nearly 7 square miles and made hundreds of thousands of Japanese homeless. Nonetheless, it wasn't until August 15th, after another B-29 raid on Tokyo, that the Japanese government surrendered. On September 2nd, 1945, hundreds of B-29s cruised over Tokyo Bay while the surrender was signed on the USS Missouri. The B-29 was now acknowledged as a great aircraft, but capturing islands to accommodate its relatively short range had been costly in lives and materials. Plans, in fact, had been drawn up for the B-36 to bomb Tokyo from Hawaii. But it was the nuclear age which turned military planners back to the long-range bomber concept. 6 days after the Japanese surrender, the Convair B-36 bomber was wheeled out of its experimental hangar in Fort Worth, Texas. A single fin and rudder reached nearly 47 feet off the ground. At 110 inches in diameter, the main wheels were the largest aircraft tube tires ever made. On August 8, 1946, the XB-36 was ready for its first flight. When it lifted off at 10:10 in the morning, the aircraft weighed more than 200,000 pounds. It carried 8,000 gallons of fuel, 9 crewmen, and pilot Burl Erickson. Takeoff speed was 110 knots. The plane also tested the crew. The air conditioning did not operate, and the cabin temperature was 140 degrees. The 37-minute first flight and further tests showed that other mechanical problems would have to be overcome before the aircraft would be ready for service. On one occasion, all 3 engines on one wing quit because propeller vibration had induced failure of the electrical system. Each propeller weighed 400 pounds. Another test flight saw a propeller break off at 10,000 feet. On the 16th test flight, the retract strut of the right landing gear exploded. The gear went through the fuel and oil lines of the number 4 engine, setting it on fire. The fire was extinguished, and all but pilot Erickson and the co-pilot Gus Green bailed out. After burning off the fuel, Erickson brought the B-36 in for a safe landing. Needless to say, engineers redesigned the retract strut. But ultimately, the landing gear would have to be replaced completely. Too much of the plane's weight was resting on the main wheels. Unless the runway